I will rarely have ever placed a full-size trade without audio support. It's just actually, to me, it's just not worth the risk.
Welcome to The Sound Trader, a podcast where we explore how real traders are using audio and other sensors to navigate the complex and dynamic world of financial markets. I'm your host, Graham, and I've spent years developing audio tools for traders that transform market data into intuitive sound patterns for trading, technically known as market sonification. On this show, you'll hear from traders at every stage in their trading journey, some who are starting to experiment with audio signals, to others who have been fine-tuning their sensory approach for years. Today's episode kicks off our revival of The Sound Trader, and I'm excited to be speaking with Bryan Yeung, a futures trader who's about a year and a half into his trading career. Bryan currently trades with TradePro Academy, focusing on auction market theory for big picture analysis while zooming into the order flow for entering and managing trades. You will hear how Bryan is incorporating audio into his process to manage timing and trade execution, reduce fatigue, and identify market patterns that might otherwise be missed. Whether you're looking to develop your edge, fine-tune your approach, or you're simply curious about different ways to engage with the markets, I believe Bryan's experiences will resonate with you. So let's dive in and discover how the sound of the market might be the missing dimension in your trading toolkit. My first guest today is Bryan Yeung, and he's joining me from, I believe, San Fran?
That's right. I'm close to San Francisco, maybe about 10 miles away, close to the airport.
So I'm going to probe you a bit about your trading and your journey in trading, as well as maybe hear a bit about your experience introducing audio to your trading. How about you tell us a little bit about yourself and your current stage in your trading journey?
Sure. So I started trading about, I say give or take, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. A good portion of that it has become full-time. Right now I'm trading with a group called TradePro Academy. The head trader is Victoria Stefanov. We focused on our auction market theory. So trading the distributions, theory is that price moves typically within a normally distributed range, and will typically execute orders or look for entries on the edges of those extremes, so that if you're an NQ trader, you'll get north of 40 points of movement. We try to avoid the smaller plays, right? So we use really two or three concepts. One is obviously the auction market theory, and qualifying an entry is order flow. I say that because I think other systems either use no order flow and they use purely price action. Other systems, on the other hand, use purely order flow, and maybe they're looking for smaller moves than we are. So that's the way we differentiate. I'd say it's probably 75% auction market theory, and then 25%, give or take, order flow.
So
We'll take trades out of levels.
auction markets providing you bigger picture context and
That's right.
timing entries
That's
and
right.
exits using order flow, which
That's right. So levels would be determined typically by the distributions.
what do your trading monitors look like?
Got a set of four. Obviously can't see it here, but a set of four on a Windows machine. I use Sierra charts, right? So that's a Windows or Linux if you want to use Linux for that. And then I have a Linux machine next to me, but that's just mostly for notes. I use that for other work. But the four panel typically works out pretty good. I think it's a 27-inch, a higher refresh. I tend to like the smaller monitors a little bit.
I can relate to that. Did you ever read, I think there was an original publication on auction theory, which may have been on the CME exchange. Did you ever go deep into the theory? Or
I probably went on some of the papers. There's papers I believe that were written, and also there's a book on market profiles that I did go somewhat deep onto, but they're somewhat related. I mean, you could argue they're different, but I did go somewhat deeper into it. It's a fascinating thing, and it seems to play out most days. I mean, like anyone says, like they go and draw a line and they think it's their level. They don't requalify it. Problems start to happen. But if you generally observe how price operates, it typically follows that pattern, with exceptions.
And that's interesting. So you said you've been trading for a year and a half. Did you
Yeah,
dive
about
straight
two.
into this approach to the markets, or did you zigzag about a bit?
I started out on options. I think a lot of people, so I think a lot of people started out on stocks, then options, and then futures. That was somewhat of a similar approach, right? I was managing my own portfolio. It's just mostly long-term investing, my 401k, et cetera, right? Then I started looking into holding individual stocks as opposed to ETFs, then got a little more fine-grained into options, just mostly some spreads, but mostly just outright buying and selling of the positions themselves. And then moved over to futures. Futures obviously is somewhat what you see is what you get.
Is that more because of the central exchange?
The price,
So
like
the price you see
pricing.
is the real price.
That's
That
right.
just helps me feel comfortable when I'm trading, usually,
Right.
knowing that
Right.
there's one auction at play that I can tune my attention at. So you joined your trading group. Sorry, can you give us the name of the trading group again?
Yeah. Yeah. It's called TradePro Academy.
Do you trade live with them during the
We
day?
do. Yeah, that's right. There's a head trader and then there's several other traders. There's a daily live trading room. There's also a lot of great training. I went through a one-on-one training with Victorio there. What's really important, I think, is the sense of community. You know, if I were to, I think that there's obviously communities that probably are better than others, but for traders who are looking to work with other people, which I think is a great thing, finding that community that suits you should be of a top priority, right? Probably number one, right? Because it gives feedback. It's a daily, you can work on trading ideas with other people and validate them before the market opens. You know, and sometimes it's a confidence boost too. You know, so really finding that trading group, I think was big for me.
It makes a lot of sense, especially if you're new to trading, to gravitate towards a community, get that extra support. And I know that the prop desks, that's a big component
Mm,
of their trading day, is everyone piled into a room and there's discussion before the markets, there's discussion around market events. That's the feedback I've heard from our
mm.
prop traders. So, okay, so you're in this live trading group, and what caught my attention the other day is you said that you shared the audio feed live with your trading group. So what was the feedback there? What did
You
everyone
know,
think? What the hell are you doing?
for to preface it, so for anybody who's net new to a concept, it's just going to seem a little bit strange. Now, when there's a sound component to it, they're either going to embrace it or they're going to think that it's even more strange, and that's exactly that response that I got. Right. Um, some of them, I think some might have had music backgrounds, and they said, "Hey, it makes a lot of sense. It's actually a lot more comforting than watching the level two data, right? Sound being level, like audio level two, like tape data through your ears. Folks who are not used to that type of approach may not have played music or that wasn't their primary
Yeah.
mode of operation, were confused, right? Not to mention that for larger orders, I think I had either the a train or a scream happening, and so they would hear just screams. They didn't know what that was indicating, and I think
Oh,
that threw
maybe we
some of
should have
them
had a
off.
chat before you before you broadcast the horror sounds to
Yeah, yeah.
your
So it was
trading.
extreme. I explained it to them. They thought it was funny. But after some explanation, I think it became a lot more. It went a lot more past the simple alert when it reached a price, which is what people are used to, right? If they think audio, they think a very what's it like a very simplistic method, almost like getting an alert. It's at your price. Then what? As opposed to the high bandwidth, rich audio, pitch different ears, really telling you a lot of what you would normally have to unpack by eye, which at times is pretty fatiguing.
Yeah,
I think you
it's
and I talked about that.
you can definitely fit a lot of information into these two speakers on our ears. I guess that would be hard to convey over a stream without explaining. So most of your trading group, you do have a level two, like a depth of market
That's right.
up on your screens. So
Absolutely
you must
standard
have
for all
been
of us.
staring at that thing for a fair few months, I'd imagine, before you came across PriceSquawk audio. So what was, I guess, your initial reaction when you started hearing those sounds?
So I used another audio tool prior, and kind of like everything else I do, I go a little bit deeper, and then I found PriceSquawk, and PriceSquawk offered that flexibility that I was looking for. Um,
Okay, was that
the
tick strike? You can say it.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
tick strike. There's market,
it was a
um,
module on Bookmap. I
book map
love
have it.
Bookmap.
Yeah.
Yep, I don't use them anymore. I don't use them currently. It's a great tool. Part of it had an audio module. My brother actually said, "Hey, Bryan, listen to this," and he wasn't actually using his headphones. He was just listening to, which by itself offered quite a bit of improvement than just simply alert. Here's where you at. I took a look at you guys, really liked it, put it into Sierra charts, and then realized that you had the pitch dynamic, right? The up-down dynamic for the price. We had obviously the different sounds, we had the volume, and while that seems like a mouthful, it's actually very, very easy to interpret because that's just the way that we communicate with each other.
I agree. Did you have a musical background?
I played violin for a while. What the whole my brother and I played music since we were small up until high school. We just grew up listening to music, you know. So there's like a lot of other people play sports and they're amazing at it. I'm not, music. I'm probably okay, but it is something, like pitch, tone, volume. These are all things that come, I guess, kind of second nature now. But even, I think a lot of musician friends would be very, if you were to introduce them to trading, I think this would be a great way to kind of connect what they see in the DOM with what they hear, explaining to them this basically communicates the pattern of buying and selling.
Yeah, I wonder what proportion of traders out there are musicians. I'd be
I would,
interested to hear
yeah.
from anyone that is in the space that has a musical background because there's definitely something going on there in the pattern recognition. You've got,
Hmm.
like, I personally can recognize patterns way more distinctively in audio
Hmm.
than lights flashing on my computer screen. So
I
obviously that's how
totally,
this all came about.
I totally agree. I think that it doesn't require even a musical background to fully appreciate this. Naturally, I think the choice of sounds needs to be tailored to the individual. But if you have something as simple as the footsteps and it's being louder, it's softer or louder, that already tells you quite a bit. And then not to mention if it goes in your left ear or your right ear, if you're doing delta, that itself tells you quite a bit. We talked about absorption. I don't want to get too technical, but we talked about like certain things that you'd have to watch for on the DOM and kind of count cards a little bit, right? With audio, it's a bit clearer. It's
Yeah.
processed better.
Do you find the pitch, like any one of those components, the pitch or the direction of the sound or the timbre of the sound, more powerful? Like what stands
Hmm.
out to you most that makes you pay attention closer to your screens as far as audio patterns or signals go?
The I think all of them combined, they kind of paint the picture. I'll say that volume naturally is important. Pitch can help quite a bit, right? In isolation, there's quite a bit to figure out. I'll give you an example, but then also just the tempo of it, right? So if you have an alert for a certain size, let's say a 5 lot trades, and you hear the alert for the 5 lot trading all the time, and it's getting louder, and the pitch is going up. I mean, that's telling you that there's quite a bit of aggressive buying in the market. Now, questions whether you do anything with that is completely up to you. But if you compare that 5 seconds later, has it changed? Is it staying the same? All of that then informs you and kind of tells you really pay attention to the DOM or the footprint and start keying in on the threshold of the numbers. Whereas before, if you was staring at it all the time, you'd probably get to fatigue before the opportunity to enter your position came across. So I think it's, there's I forget what the term is, but it's like a zoom in, zoom out, selective focus for anything that you do, right? You need to get big picture sometimes, and then at the right time, you zoom in. Now that zoom in is kind of costly. I was talking to some of the other traders today. They asked, how do you know when to use which tool? And we'll go big picture charts and a DOM, right? You've traded on DOM for a while. You probably not a good idea to just go into the DOM and there's a lot of activity. You need to just see, how did price get here? This is the level. When it gets to the level, I'm going to do something more kind of mentally expensive. I'm going to take a look at the DOM. But what the sound does, that gives you another level of kind of awareness so that you can then focus on the DOM at the right time. So really start keying into certain things on the DOM.
Are there any repeatable patterns that you hear in the sounds that would get you on alert for potential trading opportunities?
Yeah, so let's do something simple. Let's say you're in a position already and you bought, so you want to sell and make it higher. I recognize there's going to be newer traders on the call, so I won't get super technical. You need to make a decision whether you want to hold or sell your position. What do you typically do, right? You look at the chart and you kind of just watch that kind of going up. But with sound, you can unpack that a little bit more. You can listen for a continued crescendo, an increase of both size and frequency of buying, right? So that means that buying has not exhausted by any stretch. You're probably okay to continue to hold. That's very challenging well, it takes a lot more experience to go and see that on that because you kind of have to know what the numbers were prior to that. And you can do it. It takes a lot of training. This absolutely goes and goes and helps out with that. Because if you see 100 on the DOM, that's relative to you kind of need to have an idea of is that large or small. But the sound helps a lot.
Yeah, I recall back when I was learning to trade the DOM, I was instructed to do the mental arithmetic of the changes in numbers on the bid or offer. And
That's
in the
right.
TT DOM, they just accumulate the volume at the price. And I mean, that's probably the child of where the sounds came from. Because I'm like, there's no way I can keep adding that
Right,
up.
right,
Yeah. So,
right, right. Yeah, another signal would be, let's say that you're a reversal trader. Many of us at TradePro are reversal traders. So you're looking for exhaustion, right? Exhaustion takes a trained eye. Just because price stops, it doesn't, to the untrained eye, that kind of tells you to, reverse it. But we know better than that. That could just be consolidation, right? And then you'll get blown up pretty quickly. With audio, as you can kind of hear once. Now we're going to unpack a little bit further. You can listen to buys and you can listen to sells. Without headphones is very tough, but with headphones, it makes it actually quite a bit easier. One goes through each ear. If you hear one side, let's say significantly greater than the other side, but price is not behaving as such, now you probably have a trade on your hands, right? Assuming that that's at your levels, right? That really provides that context that in that case is much less fatiguing than, like you said, watching the numbers, trying to see, is this truly an increase? Did the buy side fatigue out, right? Or it's really a lot when you think about it. Like that level of focus, you probably have a few minutes maybe of that just very, very sharp focus before it's just tough to process more. And then you take a break, then what happens? You may miss out on that reversal. That's just one of many opportunities.
do you think the audio component has possibly changed your relationship with screen time? For example, has it extended your
Yeah.
trading day or changed, how you attend to execution and
Yeah.
focus?
Yeah. I think in two ways. One, overall it reduces the overall fatigue I have. I don't necessarily trade longer, but let's say if I'm spending an hour and I have a virtual mental gas tank, it's much less tapped out at the end of that session, right? The other side is that, and I don't know if maybe these are related, I'm able to selectively focus a lot more, than just being totally glued for an hour and then getting totally worn out. I can kind of zoom in and out as I need to. Like obviously if I'm getting into a level, I'll actually just look down and just listen for certain things, right? Especially if you've got headphones and it's quiet. Um, it helps out. It helps out quite a bit, right? And at that point, if you then hear those sounds, that exhaustion or that momentum, right, then you can really zoom in and focus on the visual portion.
Yeah, I have heard that from a number of listeners that they can relax between
Hmm.
trades in a nutshell. I don't know if you could call it relax. You wouldn't want to relax too much, but you can passively observe and then
Hmm.
zone in.
You,
And
you said you played music before too, right?
yeah,
You're
well,
into
I've always
music.
been an amateur, so but
Yeah,
yeah, definitely
yeah. So
musically inclined.
So remember, it's like active listening is not called zero effort. It's definitely much more than passive listening, but it's not like actively playing, right? So the different levels of effort. I would liken watching the DOM and really watching the footprint for every number. That's very, very active, right? So it might be like playing a piece. But if you just put your head down and you're actively listening, I think it's a lot less fatiguing than playing, but you're still getting a lot of the communication. But it's like the assistant. The assistant through the voice kind of indicates, hey, it's time to pay attention. Something interesting is happening here. And then the visual says exactly what is happening, right?
So if you were to introduce, I guess, audio to a new trader in your group or anyone, how would you go about training them to listen to the market? Is there any
Mm.
specific first steps that you think would be key?
Actually, it's funny. Like you recommended to start simple and just listen to the bid and the ask. Like get used to the medium, right? And there's some assumptions of how experienced they have already with level two. So let's make the assumption that they recognize how aggressive participation works versus passive, mechanically what happens. But let's say they understand that bid and ask left and right. I think maybe depending on the instrument, the volume filter maybe, but even that is just super useful to listen to bid and ask in stereo and key in on the frequency, key in also on the tempo of it, and
Yeah, I
and
was
just
going to
spend a couple
mention
minutes.
the rhythm. I think
That's right.
really stands out to me. I mean, have you ever been paying attention to the market and all of a sudden the rhythm just grinds to a halt and you're like, hey, what's
That's right.
what's going on here?
Yeah, that's right. It's really again, it goes back to the exhaustion. At least I focus a lot on trading that. Price stalls, and so that might get your attention, or you basically hear one side's still very aggressive, and the others like the pitch just not changing. So for everybody who hasn't used PriceSquawk, pitch can be an indicator of price, right? So if the price is staying the same, visually you're seeing that, but you're still seeing you're hearing that there's still active participation. That is a real clue that you may want to act on that, right? And so by listening to the simple bid and ask where you understand what it is, there's a pitch component, there's a volume component, there's a rhythm slash a tempo component. It goes a long way. I actually think that, like you were saying, you could get a lot of value just from doing that.
And I like to call where the rhythm dries up, I call that the vacuum because you're just constantly hearing the tape trade away and then it just something's going on.
Yeah,
So
I can't describe it. It's almost like a xylophone, but that is not the sound, right? It kind of zips across the xylophone. I mean, that's probably that's really what a price sweep, right, a large order pushing through multiple prices, right? So when you hear that, that's probably a rebid or reoffer taking place, if I'm using that term correctly, right? And
Yeah.
very hard to see visually. I mean, kind of, but
I
it makes
remember
it.
there was a few terms. I think the smackdown was something that I attended a few no BS day trading webinars back in the day,
Mhm.
and there was a DOM movement called the smackdown that John Grady pointed out, where the price trades through a profile level, and there's a quick whip up in price action, and then it just gets smacked back down into the
Mm.
profile.
Right.
And
So the massive market sell, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
when I introduced an audio component to that, it was a real melody that you could hear, especially in the E-minis, where you just hear this as orders
Hmm.
puke their positions and so
Yeah, yeah,
forth, and
yeah.
then straight back down. And yeah, I think that hardwired a pattern, and I think it's benefited me for quite a while. Um, so so it sounds
Yeah.
like
Let me
audio's
expand on that.
yeah, go for
If
it.
you don't mind, love to expand on it for a few moments. So when you're normally looking at the DOM, you're already looking for that. Let's say that you're looking for a big seller and you want to join in with the big seller. So what do? You look at the DOM and you're looking for those spikes, right? With the audio, like your new workflow or the way that you use it, you're listening for those things, and it's very, very clear. So once you listen for that, you just look at the DOM and you see where it originated from, and then it really clues you in on that because then it's already telling you how dramatic of a sell that was, and you're ready to kind of look for it. You don't have to focus as much on the numbers, right? So if you see multiple of that, yeah, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna short. I'll probably short that.
Would there be consistent sound patterns that would give you that response? Like, do you think hypothetically one day, and I'm not aware of anyone actually doing this yet. I've heard of people primarily using sound, but do you think you could just trade off the sound component?
Um, I don't know. I think that I think that if you're a scalp, well, trading, it really depends on the type of trading that you do, right? So if you're looking for if you use size to make your P&L and you're looking for a few ticks or even a few points, potentially you could do a lot of good work, I think, with just sound, right? I think that if you're looking to hold for a bit longer, I think sound is amazing. It just needs to, uh, it's probably what you use to go and enter or exit position, or
Yeah.
enter, maintain, and exit position. Sorry.
So if you're using a bigger picture concept, such as profile, obviously, um, perhaps not. Though, yeah, we do in some of the plug-in versions of PriceSquawk, there is a volume profile
Mm,
feature where you can hear the loudness of sounds is mapped to the the volume profile. So if it's a louder sound, you know that the profile's relatively thick
mm.
at an area. Um,
I'm aware of it. I would love to go into that deeper. It just for anybody who's listening, it's such a rich it's a such a rich tool set. You can get a lot of value using a very little bit of it. But it's worth digging into, I think, sounds that one gravitates towards. There's the pitch component, there's the sound, there's the stereo component, right? There's the alerts component. There's a lot of other stuff that Graham is currently working on. But there's a lot of flexibility. The web one is awesome. I use the web one every day. I also use the Sierra Charts or the desktop version. There's just quite a bit of flexibility in there as well. And it actually works amazing on replay, both in Sierra and also in Jigsaw. Both the replays
is that
features work
right?
absolutely. It work exceptionally.
Huh. Okay.
I was shocked at work how well that worked.
I might have to get into technically with you after this how you enable that in Sierra.
Yeah, and it works amazing. And if you just think about, let's say the day wraps up, you want to, you can do your trade journal, right? everyone should be doing a trade journal to a degree. However, if you're looking for areas that you missed, this is a great way to go and review that, right? You go and get onto the area, start play, and then just listen, or just maybe just listen, like right at the inflection point for reversal traders. Just listen, and what do you hear? And so you do one of two things. You listen, confirm, you know what, I was just distracted, or it wasn't at a level and I chose not to take it. That might be one thing. The other way might be, you know what, I know that I should be taking a trade like that. It's at my level, but I didn't hear it. So you may go back into your settings and you realize you want to modify your settings. So you will modify your settings for that, and you'll save it as one of the drop-down profiles. And that's how you start to get quite a bit of customized, just a lot additional value from that. Right?
Yeah,
So I ended
wow.
up using more
That's
delta volume, you know.
Do you think that's an area we could improve to streamline market replay with audio? I mean, it sounds like
I
Sierra
think it's
does a
huge.
reasonable job.
Does a great job. I was expecting nothing. I think you and I talked, and so I went a little deeper and I realized. So then I used Jigsaw. I've been using Jigsaw for a bit, anyways. It works great. You have to get the TradeOvate add-on. But then I looked at Sierra and it works amazing with the Denali data feed. It's literally just the data sends out. Actually, the data is basically verbatim of what you get from the replay system. So if you compress ticks, you got to be aware of that. This is starting to get a little bit in the weeds, right? If you use NQ or use an instrument where you tend to compress ticks, those ticks as compressed from that chart is the level of granularity that goes into PriceSquawk. So what I found is that I moved the PriceSquawk app onto a chart that had no compression because I want that fine-grained, like 0.25, zero point 0.5. I don't want the compression. I don't want additional compression onto that, because then I miss out on the xylophone, type sounds when someone's like aggressively buying or selling. But that's what I found from it, and I changed up some of the settings with Graham's help, and then I use quite a bit of the delta volume, because that's when you can listen to the imbalance when it shifts from one ear to the other. It really does paint a much better picture of what's happening underneath, right?
Is there any certain sound effect or type of sound effect that you'd like to hear more of, that we could add into it?
You know, the wood blocks, maybe I'm just more familiar with the wood blocks, but wood block type seems to work really well because it's easy to understand on volume, obviously, but it also works really well on pitch, right? Whereas some of the voice ones goes from too deep and then a scream, whereas the um like I don't know, I wasn't a percussion player, but like, when you any of the mallet struck instruments like a xylophone, woodblock, they seem to the sounds just seem to respond better to the dimensions that we work with. So I need to play around with some of the other sounds.
I wonder if that's percussion instruments that have
That's
that
right.
melodic capability. I my favorite sound effects have always been the woodblock and the glockenspiel.
Yeah, that would be it.
Yeah,
Let's
which
change it
yeah,
up.
that
You're right.
might sound a bit esoteric to people who are not familiar with the tool, but those sounds, they're short and sharp. So if you've
Hmm.
got a really fast tape, um, you can hear a really high resolution of the trades in the tape, but you also get a really crystal audio pattern for price action,
That's
because
right.
the pitch will increment a semitone, which is a musical term for just two keys on a piano, every time price moves up an increment. And yeah, I really find those musical tools, but then, I mean, it's each to their own, isn't it? Because there's others that listen primarily to the speech, the equivalents of that, where it
Hmm.
announces buy, sell.
Yeah, I think you said it right. There's the right amount of it's the resolution or contrast. So you think about the tools that we use, like you want certain things to be very high contrast, right? You want to see when there's a big sell happening. Unfortunately, a lot of the tools that we use just take up just a lot of digestion. Takes a lot of looking to kind of get past that and into the meaning. And unless you've been trained, it's very easy to just one, be fatigued, or two, miss it altogether, right? And I think with the sound component, especially with those single strike, the struck tones, percussion tones, it has the ability to be modified without it become morphing into something else, like someone's voice or word. That can be, you change it a little bit and then it almost becomes something else, right? So I feel like that's those are actually great for the was like the pit sound. I forgot what that's actually called, but um it's basically, when there's a lot of just activity. And that's great for telling you, hey, something is happening. But then when you're asking what is happening, I think that's where the xylophone, the wood block, like those types of tunes that have that resolution go a long way, and it's very comfortable to digest.
So I'm envisioning here you would have in the app, for example, you'd have a widget that would passively keep you clued in to
Hmm.
the overall volume flowing through the market. And
Yep.
then like do you actively turn sounds on and off during the trading session? Like mute different
Sometimes,
audio components?
sometimes. Right now I'm just trading. Right now I'm just trading NQ, but we were talking. I was trading CL crude oil for a few months. What I would do is everything that you heard me talk about, that was all NQ, but I put the trading pit sounds on CL so that when I heard a little bit more commotion, then I could just kind of look at and get clued into what I needed to do. So it was almost like a tap on the shoulder, so to speak. Now, unfortunately, I didn't go and port over all the sounds that I have on NQ over into CL. Granted, I don't trade that nearly as much right now. But I would then do that. But it's almost like you're tapping the shoulder, and it's qualitative too. It's not just, hey, pay attention. It's more, should I be paying attention, to what degree?
Yeah, that
So
makes
the sounds
sense.
obviously overlap.
We call that the virtual pit widget, but there are
Virtual pit, that's right.
different settings. There's a template in there called the market pulse, where it can just play a periodic sound that gets louder.
Hmm.
What do you think of making, instead of just using the volume of the sound, having a pulse that gets more frequent to represent the same information? So if more volume's flowing through the tape, um, the sound will get more rapid. Do you think that would be a clearer representation, or you're impartial?
I think it depends. It depend. I think the where it resets itself make a big difference, right? So as pitch goes up, it can't go up infinitely. At some point, it needs to reset itself. So I've been struggling with that myself, trying to figure out when's the best way to just how to calibrate that. I think that with something that um, increases its frequency with rhythm, you're obviously going to have to reset itself at some point. And I don't know how quick those reset cycles may be. It really depends on what instruments you trade and how they behave, right?
Would you say you'd rather it to be as automated as possible so you don't have to?
I think in general, the smarter default settings are obviously a great thing. I think that the ability to customize like in the right time is super important too. So almost like this is your default setting. This will probably work with this this type of volume, these kind of days. But here are the knobs that you should be turning, based on it. And one of them might be um, when you reset. Some people might want to have a more frequent reset if they're
Yeah,
trading
okay.
kind of more compressed intervals. And so maybe a whole reset cycle for me might be 30 or 40 points, which is somewhat of a trade, right? That makes sense. But if I heard that reset all the time, it I wouldn't really know if price was continuing moving in that direction. I would have to really listen to it. So that's just my thought. But I think that having, I mean, some automatic detection and then just some slight tweaks would go a long way.
So you've got some particular settings that you've kind of worked out over time. So you might be interested in, we've got a new feature I'm labeling as
Yep.
patches that's coming out in the next few days, where you're able to, you'll be able to obviously save your individual widget settings in the app, but also share them. Do you think that will
That's cool. Yeah, absolutely.
be
Yeah,
useful?
absolutely. Yeah, I screenshot it. Usually I got excited about it. Is this, just like we were talking about, the general trading, other topics, like the collaboration, the sharing of settings, the sharing of ideas. I think that's what makes everybody move ahead, maybe a little bit, but it's forward motion, right? Someone asked me, "Hey, Brian, what do I do to get started out with NQ?" And I'm like, "Well, here's what I do because we trade the same way." So I just basically took a screenshot and sent it over to him, and yeah, he was like, "Love it. I'm gonna go check it out." I think that sharing or collaboration of settings like that can really help. It might be a crude trader who is an expert crude trader and might say to me, "Brian, this is what I use in order to look for these," right? So for these situations, yeah,
Looks like we'll have at least one user of the new feature straight away. That, I mean,
yeah,
it's been
yeah,
requested for nearly a decade. Like, how do we
yeah.
distribute our settings? And now that
Hmm.
with the application, the web app, it's much simpler process where you can capture your individual widget settings. And yeah, the idea is that you can obviously save them for you as your own templates, but
Hmm.
also publish them, and others will be able to see, all right, Brian's got a NQ setting here, a little description.
Yep. Having that description would be, I think it's the author, maybe other users, what it is, obviously, and then maybe ways to iterate on top of that. As an example, it could be really good for NQ, but this is coming from a reversal trader, so it's kind of optimized, for exhaustion and these kind of things. Whereas it's, hey, you know what, I'm a momentum trader, or I do it differently, but I trade ES. Like they can iterate, they can take what they need and then port it back over to kind of like their instrument plus their style of trading.
If we were to set up an audio feed, what would be the key component of that audio feed that you'd like to get across to your community?
It's, I think it goes back to, it's the warm up, it's the um, familiarization with what this is, and I think tying that into the explanation that this is audio level two, I think already takes us a good bit of the way there. Then kind of unpacking, this is stereo. So in your left, this is set to this. In your right, this is set to this. Obviously you can listen to the bid and the ask. But I think that having it stereo going through Discord, which it does already a great job of, and then just some live explanation, almost like if you were watching a sports game. A friend of mine played college football, and I don't really know much about it. I know of it, but not his level of detail, right? But when we're sitting and watching the game, and he's pointing out things, that's a whole new level of not ability to play, but appreciation for what's happening there. So I think that getting people to a new level of appreciation there opens up their eyes to how they can use audio to trade either better or in a less fatigued manner, which probably is better both both ways.
Let me ask you this: have you ever played your trading audio, PriceSquawk audio, to non traders? I know there's some family members out there who have some irritated wives or
Like,
partners.
no, like my girlfriend will come in every once in a while. You're like, hey, what's going on? Like, what is there activity in there? So it's just we haven't gotten really detailed, but I think the trading pit sounds. I think it's pretty easy to understand that there's some type of commotion or some type of activity. Everyone's seen like a trading pit in a movie, or you know, so they
Yeah.
probably appreciate that something's happening and they're
So
going to
if
pay
your
attention.
girlfriend opens the door and is like, "Hey, what's going on?" You could be like, "Oh, I should be trading. There's an opportunity here."
I should get an order in. Good luck.
I've got a few questions that kind of come out of nowhere here since we're getting towards the tail end of an hour. If you were to
Yeah.
compare market sounds that you're listening to something in everyday life or in nature, do you have any analogy that would come to mind?
It's like if you go camping and it's quiet. I know you camp as well, right? So it's just once you get to the campsite and you've been there for a period of time and just you relax, maybe you have dinner and you just listen. There are things happening, right? You know when birds are interested in an area, right? You can hear the chirping, and for some reason maybe a bird just had chirped outside, but that's the kind of subtle stuff that once you're used to listening to the level two audio, or the lack, like dead quiet in the forest is not necessarily a good thing either, right? So that would be when it goes from, a little bit of commotion and then dead quiet, that is not good, right? And so that's something to also like, and when you're trading and it goes from quite a bit of sound to just dead quiet, it's not like everything packed up and left the market. That's not necessarily a good thing, especially if you're in a position, right?
Huh.
So,
Maybe we should name that condition. I think I touched on it before, the vacuum, but we should call it the campsite.
I mean, the vacuum is like that. It's just you can hear a pin drop. It's like if you have dogs at home and it's just super quiet. There's probably a mess or something that like when the
Yeah,
dogs are just
something's
not
going
jumping
on.
around, something
Yeah.
is going
It's like if my kids have gone quiet for more than 5 minutes,
on.
my hair stands up on the back of my neck.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
like, okay, they're up to something.
Yeah, that's right.
Audio is to remain a key component of your trading. Um, what would make it the most important factor of your success?
Well, for me, because even though we have a large order flow component, we should be entering and exiting typically at predefined areas of interest, right? So plan
Yep.
goes in, um, tying in or integrating that plan with audio, I think would help out quite a bit. Like right now, uh, I think the luxury of kind of knowing a little bit how to kind of code and build things is you can build tools for yourself, right? You can go way, way off the deep end and forget completely about trading while doing so. I don't recommend that, but if you have the ability to build things, then a lot of other possibilities come up. And one of them is a level system that I built to just make sure that on any instrument I'm looking, any chart that I'm looking at, all the levels are synced across tooling, whether it's Motive Wave, whether it's Sierra charts. Now, that's not the point of the conversation is that having the tools talk to each other, I think gets you to a new level. It's just like we're going back to the tech world, but systems that talk to each other generally create a lot more value, or at least a better life for people who use them. And I think we are no exception to that. So having your levels kind of being able to talk with your audio system saying, hey, you're entering a trade, you're not at a predefined level. This is a B, this is a C plus or B level trade. What do you want to do? Things like that just kind of one keep you honest or make you outright even better as in this is now approaching your level. You're 10 points away, like plus or minus 10 points is where I usually make a decision, but we are 10 points away from your zone or whatever that is, and that starts to kind of really communicate. It's like having a co-pilot, having an assistant. Whereas I've always been into two people like pair programming or two people working on something. Like, you get a lot of great results happening, right? It's not 1 plus 1. There's definitely more happening than that. That's with just one person on the keyboard too. So
Yeah, wow, that's some great feedback. So I think integration is your primary point there. Our vision is to have the ultimate audible co-pilot, and
yeah, right.
we've I've been using that terminology for nearly a decade before co-pilot became a thing. So how we can get the different tools and platforms to communicate is a engineering problem that I'm
Right.
constantly thinking of.
Yeah, I think there's just it's a lot of potential, right? Because the medium is unique in that you can listen to somebody and you can kind of watch their, you can watch their expressions, and that the sum of that leads to kind of like what we're doing right now. It's like a real communications. Whereas if you're just listening, I know a lot of people are kind of listening just the audio portion of this. That's good communication, but that's partial communication. When you're trading, if you see just the visual, that's almost like having no subtitles. If you're listening, you can kind of get what people are doing, but you're not really getting the full picture of it, right? So you add subtitles and you add audio. Now you're really getting the full trading experience. You don't get any less, you don't get more fatigued by watching a movie with that. You get very fatigued if you have to interpret what they're acting out and you don't get to listen to it. So it actually works in reverse of what people think, right? That's the way I look at it.
Thanks. Thank you for sharing that. My final question has there been a moment where you heard something while trading that non-PriceSquawk traders would have completely missed? And I guess if so, what was it like to have that sixth sense?
I was listening to actually today. It's actually fresh in mind. Um, I sh I forgot whether I was supposed to enter or exit a trade, but when you have that delta, basically when you have the difference of buy and sell in your ears, and it goes from ear to ear, that can very much indicate that something's going to reverse and it's a real reversal. So I really hadn't used much of that setting before. Like right now I've been viewing the web and the desktop version, but today I heard the sound shift from my right to my left ear, the delta wise, and then the pitch kind of changed accordingly. And so that really got my attention. I don't know if I would be able to go and tell somebody on the dom, look at what's happening right now, because that's something that one happens fast, and I think our auditory memory, it works a little differently than our visual memory, right? So when you listen to things, and please people correct me if I'm wrong, but when you listen to things, there's a little bit more of a staying power memory of what you heard, and that certainly helped out this morning, right? It's the what just happened, right? And it totally burst on me.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. It sounds like you're truly experiencing and or getting some edge out of this audio component that
Yeah. Well, my trading has a lot of work to do, obviously.
oh, well,
But it's
everyone's does, Brian. I don't think
yeah,
someone who's been trading 10 years is like, yeah, I've nailed it.
yeah,
So,
yeah. But I will rarely, if ever, place a full size trade without audio support. It's just actually, to me, it's just not worth the risk.
well, any final comments, words of wisdom from your trading journey so far that you'd like to say before we call it?
No, I appreciate all your support. It's been super, super helpful. Um, I think other things, find a great community, right? Make that a priority. Trade with other people who think and who are aligned with what you want to be doing. And then it goes without saying, carefully manage your risk. It's probably the number
Yep,
one skill of trading. Manage your risk.
absolutely. Well, Bryan Yeung, to all our listeners, let's thank him for sharing a lot of insights. I've found it very, very interesting and got a lot out of this, Bryan, and I'm looking forward to collaborating to share some new ideas that you've triggered me to think of for integrating audio into your trading. And I also very much appreciate you sharing the audio trading experience with your group. That's fantastic. So hopefully we can streamline that a bit in the future with the new patches feature. You can share your setup. So that'll be coming to the web app shortly. So thank you very much, Bryan.
You bet. Thanks a lot.